Hello, and welcome to Unwatchables, the podcast where there's nothing to fear but film itself. I am Marc Dottavio.
And I'm Seth Troyer.
And today we welcome back the one and only, at least as far as we know, Nathan Rabin. We are discussing Dan Akroyd's notorious first and to date only directorial effort, a $45 million bomb that asked the burning question, what if Chevy Chase starred in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Or something.
It may not have been a question audiences were interested in, but it did result in something so strange, off-putting, and just maybe not that bad that some might call it a cult classic. That much reviled film is 1991's Nothing But Trouble.
And there should be an exclamation point, as Nathan said. It's so zany, it deserves a damn exclamation point at the end.
Maybe after each word.
Or our director's cut.
But trouble.
Or possibly the fucking cat thing, where it's nothing but trouble! Exclamation point! Question mark! Exclamation point!
Oh.
But yes, so Nathan, he has written for many publications like the AV Club and The Dissolve. Today you can find him at nathanrabin.com, where he produces a ton of content and where you can also get his many books, including My Year of Flops, The Joy of Trash, books on Weird Al, The Insane Clown Posse, and Fish. And now, The Fractured Mirror, his definitive guide to American movies about filmmaking. And it is definitive. I am working my way through right now, and this is over 500 pages.
It's well over 500 pages. It took me, I thought it was going to take like a year and a half to write it. I'm like, how many movies about movies can there possibly be? I discovered that the answer was a whole lot more than I anticipated. So I ended up writing about over 500 movies. It took me over 4 years to do so.
So do you think you did find all the American movies about filmmaking? As of now, do you think this is complete?
That is a very, very good question. And again, sort of my obsessive autistic ADHD brain punishes me when I find a movie that fits the criteria that I somehow did not know about. For example, there was a 2017 Reese Witherspoon vehicle where she played a lady who befriends a bunch of screenwriters and filmy type things happen. And, the sane rational part of my brain is like, you can't do everything. That was pretty obscure. Even you didn't know it. You did 99.99999% of these movies. You can't kill yourself over the tiny percentage that you did not do. That said, I kind of wish that I could go back and do that. There's I was reading about Mickey Rourke, as one does. And apparently one of his next films is called National Lampoon's Hollywood Hustle. And it stars Mickey Rourke and Alec Baldwin and Danny Trejo and Carrot Top as versions of themselves. And I really want to write about that horrible, horrible movie. And God, how desperate must Alec Baldwin be to star in something like, actually like imagining him like getting the script is far more amusing than the film itself. It's like, well, I guess I killed somebody. I can't be too picky these days. And Top, he's a popular, chairman of the board. He's worked in film as well, and Capital One doesn't want me anymore. And Mickey Rourke too. My God! And there are two National Lampoon movies in my book. National Lampoon's Dirty Movie, which is literally just a bunch of terrible street jokes acted out by nobodies who are sometimes naked, and then National Lampoon's Another Dirty Movie, which is the exact same but slightly different. And Jonathan Silverman is the director and the writer of that. And I said, it's beneath the dignity even of a man who said yes to multiple Weekend at the Bernie's movies. So, yeah, I would like to fit, that into the small but important National Lampoon section of my book.
See, I've been kind of getting into similar books to that, in that I feel like I've gone a long way with, I think a lot of culture has, where they've been like, well, I'll just look it up, and like the internet will have just like a list, and I can just endlessly click. But there is something kind of amazing that I've been getting into with film books that are so encyclopedic, and like mostly the idea that it's one person, not like, IMDb's staff or whatever, or like this, big publication of people like with a think tank. It's like one
It's Leonard
person's
Maltin's
journey,
film guide.
and that's kind of what you're doing. And I'm kind of like really interested in that stuff. I love that because it is, I don't know, it's almost like against the internet. It's like, I'm going to figure it out. A human being,
Yeah, and it's a really fun read because, one moment it's Sunset Boulevard or Barton Fink, and then something like Being John Malkovich, which you think for a second like, okay, actually I do see how it's a movie about filmmaking, or at least, by the criteria that you're going by. And then it's Big Fat Liar, the Frankie Muniz, Paul Giamatti
Sure.
vehicle, and it's all there together in alphabetical order. You can flip through it if you want. You could start at the top, and it is truly a work of devotion. So yeah, this is not a movie about filmmaking. However, it did make me think of the person who wrote the foreword to your book, which is Joe Dante of the Gremlins films and the Burbs. I feel like if this movie is going for anything, it's kind of that sensibility that he's good at. Whether it works or not, I guess, is kind of the question. But I think some context is probably important for this movie. Not that it really makes more sense with or without like in any kind of context, but the 80s were a great decade for Dan Akroyd. Like besides him coming off of SNL in the 70s, being the youngest member of the original cast, that just between 80 and 89, he did the Blues Brothers, Trading Places, 2 Ghostbusters movies, even some movies that maybe aren't looked on as fondly today, like Spies Like Us or the Dragnet movie with Tom Hanks, were still pretty successful at the time. And this Nothing But Trouble actually came a year after he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Driving Miss Daisy. So I don't know, is this like his blank check movie?
Yeah, I could totally see that. He had a really, really impressive 1980s. He wrote a bunch of movies that made a lot of money, including Spies Like Us and Dragnet, which are not considered masterpieces, but were sizable box office hits. And I feel like this is kind of the purest representation of who he was as a person. I think this was too much Dan Akroyd for anybody to handle. And it's funny that you mentioned Joe Dante, because apparently Dan Akroyd, in a shocking turn of events, only directed this after a bunch of people turned it down. Those people include John Hughes, Ivan Reitman, and John Landis, who apparently thought the script was garbage. I was like, no, I do not want to be a part of this.
Give it to Dan.
Yeah, well, Akroyd wrote the screenplay for the Blues Brothers, and apparently it was 700 pages, and it took place in outer space, and like the ghost, like everything that he did was wildly, wildly, wildly excessive, and you needed somebody like John Landis or Ivan Reitman or Harold Ramis to kind of come in and bring him back to earth and say, no human being can do something so crazy and ambitious and audacious. I feel like this is the work of no adult telling him that he can't do something. And sometimes you need adults. And apparently the Warner Brothers was very preoccupied with a little movie called Bonfire of the Vanities. So they did not keep as close an eye on this as they would have if they were not also preparing possibly an even bigger bomb.
Even like looking back, it's funny, like the way that Dan Akroyd is remembered. I mean, he did have kind of this.
Well, he's still
he kind
alive.
of left movies for a while. He's still around, but it is kind of I'm sure a little shocking to some people that like really Dan was like the big deal out of like, you would watch these movies and be like, well, Belushi, John Candy, of course, those are the stars here. But like, and John Candy's there, but Dan Akroyd is there, but it's just funny to think about him being like the singled out, like, that's the guy. He's going places, which I'm surprised he didn't fit more UFOs into this, because it wasn't part of his whole thing that is like, I'm done with movies. I'm going to focus on my research on UFOs or whatever.
This is like the transition.
Yeah, he was very into conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and
it's 40 and enough, I guess.
Well, and I could see how, all the people turning down this movie and then him kind of just having to direct it. I get there is something about his direction of this movie that maybe you could call reluctant, or like he just has to do it.
It's like, you put it together, scene after scene.
But you could see why, I could see why it got made because of all of his success before this. But also, if you look at the origins of like the idea of this movie, it apparently started with them going to a screening of Hellraiser, which is like, apparently that just thought, you know what? This is my new comedy.
Well, they said that they were like in the theater and people were laughing, which is like, there's like darkly humor parts of the first Hellraiser movie, but like, I don't know if you would walk away like being like, oh, that was a horror comedy movie. We should make a horror comedy movie like Hellraiser. I don't know where they got that necessarily, or if there was like weird teenagers in the audience and they were just looking at the teenagers laughing at everything anyway. But who knows?
Well, I recently watched the motion picture Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 for the first time, and I was struck by how much this resembles that. This is when Canon had all of the money in the world, and they were going to pay every prominent filmmaker to like make their labor of love. And with Hope Hooper, they made Invaders from Mars and Life Force, which I think both are great movies and very, very weird.
Crazy.
And then a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was written by L.M. Kit Carson. You might know as the star of David Holtzman's Diary, which is featured in my book. And it's just this incredibly bonkers, nutty, satirical comedy that is very much in the same vein as Nothing But Trouble. I would be very, very surprised if they hadn't seen that and if that was not a big inspiration, in part because a lot of it deals with a sort of an underground hellhole, like a literal hell that's made out of like a broken down amusement park. So yeah, a lot of similarities between that. I think that was kind of a sort of a slasher movie that was also a dark comedy. And with this, I think it was a dark comedy that has the soul and the heart and the warped mind of a horror movie. And I think this is a much more effective and a much more coherent movie if you think of it as a waking nightmare and not as a funny Saturday Night Live-derived comedy about some wacky people who go on a nutty trip that ends poorly.
It makes a lot more sense if you think of it as a waking nightmare. Absolutely.
Definitely.
There's like a Beetlejuice thing to it. It feels like some kind of like they were going for like, oh, well, we'll just do a Tim Burton thing. Like that is just something you just go out and do. And which is like a good lesson to be just like, if you walk away watching a movie and being like, I'm just going to go make that, it's probably not going to happen if that is your impetus for making a movie. Because this does have kind of like a rip-off quality of that in some ways.
Well, I feel like when a director, particularly a reluctant director, makes their first film, a lot of times they kind of lean heavily on their cinematographer, because cinematographers, they're very experienced, they know what they're doing, they know where to put the camera. And the cinematographer for this is Mr. Dean Cundey, who is an absolute legend. He worked a lot with John Carpenter, a lot of his sort of seminal movies. He shot Rock and Roll High School. And perhaps most pertinent, he was nominated for an Academy Award for his cinematography for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So this is an ugly, ugly, deliberately repulsive movie that kind of looks great because it has a great cinematographer.
Yeah, all of those competing interests are, I think, probably what put people off to this a lot in the first place, because you do have an aspect of this that I think is trying to be a comedy, at the same time, you have these crazy inspirations like Hellraiser and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but also then this crazy budget of $45 million, which, if to put that in context, Ghostbusters had like a $25 million budget. And I do think this is a case where that it is all on the screen, and probably for the
You
better.
see it.
Oh, yeah.
There's lots of sound
You're not
stages.
sure why it's there, but it's whoa.
Well,
There was money on this.
one of the things that I love about this is that it's so incredibly homemade, and it's so incredibly handmade, and there is not a CGI shot in this entire movie. There's nothing that's in front of a green screen. There's nothing but blue screen. I guess they built a lot of this on a Western set, the set for High Noon, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, they really created this nightmare hellscape that the American people inexplicably did not want to return to over and over again.
And we haven't even mentioned Chevy Chase yet. And I guess for people, believe it or not, there's probably people who haven't seen Nothing But Trouble. Chevy Chase does star here. In sort of a lead balloon kind of performance.
His body is in this motion picture.
He is present.
The words.
They paid him to stand.
Yeah, in a shocking turn of events, people didn't enjoy working with Chevy Chase, and Chevy Chase did not enjoy working with these people. Apparently, Dan Akroyd wanted to play that role himself. I thought, like, I'll play like the romantic male lead, although romantic is kind of in quotation marks. He's not exactly Romeo. And then also the judge, who is utterly repulsive and has one of film's greatest penis noses. I think if people remember,
full out penis nose.
Why he didn't get the Oscar for makeup for the penis nose alone, I do not understand. And oftentimes Academy Awards, therefore, the most in addition to the best. And that is definitely the case here, where there is just so much.
This is the most.
I read on IMDb or Wikipedia that he had a hard time directing while, for example, also playing a morbidly obese, filthy, diaper-clad mutant baby. I'm guessing it's hard to get the respect of your co-stars and your crew when you look like, baby Huey after,
and
like
you're probably sweating profusely.
Oh, well, and I think that's why, that's really nice to not have to play that role. And I gotta say, there's one small shortcoming to this film, and I'm not sure that the giant naked diaper babies add too much to the film. I think that might be the one tiny element where it goes a little too far. And maybe
it's just the one tiny element.
It's the one way in which it's grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. Otherwise, pretty much a perfect motion picture, like Citizen Kane or Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But I think, that's the one place where maybe they went a little bit awry.
Please, there must be stills floating around out there of him in that diaper, like talking to the cinematographer or like giving direction to Demi Moore.
Like, no. Not how I want you to do it. And so the plot feels pretty superfluous how they get there. They spent like a weird time at like a New York swanky publishing party, and just like there's some Brazilian guys who are referred to as Brazilianaires, who are, I guess they're
Taylor
rich. It's a
Negron.
brother and sister.
Yeah. The great Taylor Negron, always very, very funny. I enjoyed him here. He's also one of those people where I doubt that he uttered a word that came off the script. He was very into improvisation, and that was true of everybody here. I think probably with the possible exception of Demi Moore. But yeah, and I think kind of the opening scenes are interesting to me because they sort of establish like these are the masters of the universe. These are the people who go to Davos, who go to Bohemian Grove. Like, they're so rich and they have so much money and everything is so incredibly easy for them. And I was thinking a lot of times they refer to Chevy Chase's character as a banker, even though he's a financial publisher. I think it's like a Barron's or Bloomberg's or whatever, those kinds of things. And for me, banker, New York, Jew. That's what people mean when they talk about bankers from New York. And obviously, Chevy Chase is not Jewish. He has a very goyish quality about him. But I don't know that the judge would necessarily know that. It kind of reminds me of the Randy Newman song, Rednecks, where the protagonist, sort of the narrator, rather, he's talking about Lester Maddox being on TV with some smart-ass New York Jew. And the smart-ass New York Jew is Dick Cavett, who is not Jewish at all, but by virtue of
Jewish
being a
icon.
New Yorker, by virtue of being on television, and by virtue of being a New Yorker, and by virtue of being an intellectual, is kind of considered that. The other thing that I find
valuable term.
Yeah, well, the thing that I find kind of fascinating
that they used them back then.
Oh, totally. That I find fascinating about this is a lot of times when people from other countries make movies about the United States, they depict it as being very grotesque. And very extreme, and just kind of like this wild, surreal nightmare realm. And Dan Akroyd is from Canada, which is still technically not part of the United States. So I think there's an element of that, even though obviously he has spent a lot of time in the United States. I seem to recall him spending at least 5 years working in New York. A couple of years working in Chicago. So I think there's an element of that, of foreigners' depiction of, sort of the parts of America that aren't in any guidebook, that don't have a name, and that
that's a good point.
Really part of that aren't really part of the world, the contemporary world. It's like they go back in time 100 years into this place where none of their power, none of their authority, and this was kind of before they had cell phones. But yeah, if this was an era of cell phones, that obviously would have to be addressed.
Well, there is a very 1991 GPS in this movie.
Oh no, he has a car phone as well. Yeah.
Ooh, there we go. But they do not have smartphones. They do not. They cannot text. They cannot get Uber out of El Convenia. And I was actually kind of struck, too, by just kind of the casting. And I felt like the role that John Candy plays, very much of the straight man, the cop, it's such a Dan Akroyd role. It's weird. Narrow, you recite lots of code. And John Candy is really good in it. I think he's really good in... really good at that and the mute granddaughter. But yeah, it just struck me.
I suppose he gets his yucks there. Yeah. He has to play it straight with the cop, but then he still is going to get his yucks. Because I was like, wait, are they really just going to have John Candy in this just be just a straight man? And then, no pun intended, he...
and I got to say, too, he looks pretty damn good in drag.
I know.
The idea is he's supposed to be repulsed. And obviously, if you had a choice between 1990... if you're a heterosexual man, you got to choose between 1991 Demi Moore and John Candy in drag, you're gonna go for Demi Moore. But he was a handsome man.
Speaking for yourself, I think he made an amazing drag queen in this.
Yes.
Yeah. He looks damn good. And it's kind of underplayed too, because he doesn't have any dialogue. Kind of both of his roles are sort of underplayed in a movie where everything is crazily over the top. And apparently they wanted Catherine O'Hara, another SCTV alum, to play the role that was eventually played by Valerie Bromfield, who, if I'm not mistaken, was SCTV, SNL, or quite possibly one of the 2 or 3 people who was on both. Not much of a role, but she...
The policewoman?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she was in Home Alone that same year, so I think she wanted a little break.
I think she made the right decision. But I'm glad we're talking about the early scenes, though, because I watched this with a couple of friends who not only had never seen the movie, but had no idea what it was, which was such a great thing to witness, because... especially with the title, one of them asked me, so what is this, a rom-com?
You have no idea.
Nobody remembers.
Well, it opens with these sweeping scenes of New York with Ray Charles playing. We're gonna watch Sleepless in Seattle or something. Is this a romantic movie? And it's still puzzling to me, that opening. I guess there's technically a romance in this movie, but not what I would.
Those scenes have.
I think the idea is that they're the slickest of city slickers. and that they're, these rich people, they're upper middle class. And again, I think part of it is that there's a sense of class hatred. And even though the judge is like this 570-year-old person who was like a judge before the Magna Carta, he hates outsiders. Oh, he hates outsiders. He hates fancy people. He hates bankers. He may not be fond of Jews. So yeah, I think there was, again, kind of like a culture clash and setting up these worlds of, Chevy Chase does everything. Everything comes easy to him. He doesn't have to try at all. And he finds himself into this world where none of his power matters for anything. And he is completely powerless. And he has to kind of exist by his wiles, which he doesn't seem to have a whole lot.
Yeah, the tone turns like instantly as soon as they're off the freeway and they are going into Valkenvania. It's like the movie completely transforms, which is definitely a good thing because, boy, those early scenes are kind of rough. Like if you had thought the movie was going to continue on in that way, like just the way that Chevy Chase, like at the very beginning of the movie, gets out of his like limo with a cigar, and his very first line is like, "Not bad for a one-eyed Russian immigrant."
It's like, oh, here we go.
Was that a joke? And he just wisecracks like constantly throughout the whole movie without ever actually saying something that's funny.
Well, I think what he's doing. Well, I think what he's doing, and you see this in actors like that, is that he's heckling his own movie. Yes. And that he sort of exists within the movie and outside of it. He's ostensibly playing this character, but he's really movie star Chevy Chase, who's in a role that he doesn't like in a movie that he doesn't like, making no effort to hide
which
the fact
almost
that
works.
He finds this as
the character.
Yeah. Well, again, I think if you want a movie where Chevy Chase is tortured constantly, where it's a miserable time, where the universe punishes him relentlessly for being handsome and successful, this is a good one because boy oh boy does he take it on the chin. I mean, it doesn't really have any Marc. Admirable qualities either. It's not like he's this heroic figure. He's just horny. And he wants to have sex with more, and then he wants to get out of this nightmare realm. He's the protagonist, but it doesn't bring a whole lot to it. And it would have been interesting seeing Akroyd in that role because he was a movie star, and then he gained like 20 pounds, and then he was a character actor, and then he was in 3 movies a year in like tiny roles. Whereas then Chevy Chase kind of gave up movie stardom so that he could spend time with his family. I don't know why I'm putting that in air quotes there. And I guess they wanted to work with each other because of SNL. And apparently Chevy Chase hated the script, but thought we can make it funny through wacky improvisation. And this is the one time in that might not have worked.
One time.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff like just driving around, just doing bits like come across the no cussing sign, and there's just kind of a beat, and then shit. Oh boy, we could have polished up a few of these one-liners, couldn't we?
But I can't agree more, Marc, that like once they turn that corner into the facility or whatever, the kingdom of trash that Dan Aykroyd's wild Texas Chainsaw Massacre family lives in, it's like that's where the budget is. It's like a real crazy set. They've built this like nutty house that looks like a mutated Psycho house or something. There's cars everywhere. It's like a real junk heap of like outsider art and stuff, like rusty shark like contraptions. It's nuts to look at.
Yeah, and I actually watched this movie when I was a kid, like quite a few times. I don't think I knew who Chevy Chase was. I was kind of into horror movies, and I don't even think I realized it was supposed to be a comedy. And I just thought the house was the coolest shit. That there's this little model train with condiments on it, like around the dinner table. There's like slides and closing walls and fucking bones everywhere. And that awesome bone stripper, like a roller coaster execution machine.
It's all awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the production design perspective, like, this is a remarkable motion picture. Like, I would love to see the storyboards for it. And, one of the directors who turned this down was John Landis. And John Landis, in addition to being a comedy director, did American Werewolf in London. He did the Thriller video. Much lesser extent, he did Innocent Blood. And I feel like if he had directed it, he would have had a sure hand because he made a lot of movies before that. And then also he would have been better at handling the horror elements and merging the horror elements. I also think that this would have been better film if it had a hard R rating and more gore and more guts and more horror elements, as opposed to being kind of a dark comedy that's sort of a horror movie but never really commits fully.
Yeah, I read that there was like a PG-13 cut that they cut out violence in here, and I wish, if that's true, I wish that we had some sort of unrated cut to see like what came out of this, because it does seem compromised in that way. From the rating to the stabs at comedy, even to the title, which I would kind of like to get your guys' opinion on, because there were so many alternate titles to this. With, I guess, the very first one was Get, which I suppose is the colloquial, like, I would imagine if the film Get Out was in the Deep South, it would just be called Get.
It would fit in. Yeah, there we go. And
then there was Road to Ruin, which out of all the options, I think maybe that would have been the best. But Valkenvania was the one that Dan Akroyd liked most. And
I think that's way better. It's more cartoony.
Yeah. Well, and it gives more of a sense of what the movie, the tone and the vibe of the movie. And I also think there was an NES game in the 1980s. So that was either called Valkenvania or something very much like it. But yeah, Nothing But Trouble is just generic. It just feels like the studio executives being like, what is the name that we can just like slap on a movie marquee? And people are like, that sounds that sounds bland enough. That sounds milquetoast enough. Because I think Valkenvania and Road to Ruin would both have been better titles. It actually reminds me of Beetlejuice. They really did not like the name Beetlejuice, and they had other ones. I think one of them was House Ghosts. And then Tim Burton, apparently this might just be Hollywood lore, but he's like, House Ghosts, why don't you just call it Scared Sheetless? And they were like, maybe we should call it Scared Sheetless.
Oh, don't give them ideas.
Well, and he wanted Sammy Davis Jr. For Beetlejuice. They're like, no, we're going to put somebody who starred in a movie within the last 15 years. And Michael Keaton is freaking amazing in that. It's kind of a definitive performance. But I also would have liked to have seen Sammy Davis Jr. in that role. Riley also had a much smaller role in the original screenplay, and then they saw how wonderful Michael Keaton was. So they decided to amp it up. And yeah, that definitely is sort of a horror comedy that kind of captures the vibe of what this was going for, but did not quite achieve, perhaps.
But speaking of that, do you think that Akroyd is actually kind of doing a Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice in his role as the judge? Because there was a couple times where he was getting really manic up there, and I was thinking, this is Michael Keaton kicking over the tree and honking his crotch. Like, I don't know.
But he really doesn't have it in him. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting to me about Dan Akroyd is that he's autistic, and I'm autistic as well. And his comedy is very, very autistic, particularly Blues Brothers, particularly Saturday Night Live. And there'll be like all these scenes or these sketches where he's just rattling off just these long pages of dialogue, and he nails every single syllable and every bit. There's just sort of this precision to his comedy that I find really remarkable. And at a certain point,
and there's like a monotone, though. Yeah.
Deadpan.
That's what's like funny about it.
Very, very deadpan about that. And yeah, again, I think sort of as he got older, he got bigger and he got slower and he got less ferociously ambitious, and his interest moved towards making vodka and having
UFOs,
overhyped blues venues that the Black Crowes could play at, and finding UFOs. So he's a man of many talents, and I was excited to see him perform with with Digital Underground, which is kind of fun. And it's not his only foray into hip hop. You guys know that he also did the theme song to Dragnet, which was a rap song with him and Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
The City of Danger, is that what it's called?
I don't know.
I'll take your word for it.
I mean, talk about
You guys
tone
don't have the
shifts.
single?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah. Up on my wall. Yeah, talk about tone shifts. This movie, that is the whole thing. You're like constantly trying to figure out what to do with it. Which, yeah, like we said, like starts with the title. Like, what am I getting in for? And then it's like horror and it's silly, but it's not really nailing either of them or committing either of them. Because even when it goes to the horror elements where there's like the crazy roller coaster ride that kills you, it just goofily like puts people into a meat thing, and you're thinking like blood's gonna come out, but it's just random pieces of skeleton
Dry
flying out,
bones.
like which
well,
is
it's like
disturbing in its own way. But
it's like Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, you know, and there's that final scene of Chevy Chase running away, where he literally, his silhouette goes through the wall, Bugs Bunny style. So yeah, again,
which is like that's your ending with our, but
well,
and then we get to what you were alluding to, which is the Digital Underground show up at the house at one point in the middle of Chevy Chase trying to survive all this craziness. There's Tupac, and they do a whole number, and the judge winds up liking it,
you know, and Humpty Hump. Let's give these men let's give these late fallen heroes their props. And I love that scene. It is so much fun and so silly and comes absolutely out of nowhere. And I also love the movie magic of Shock G doing his verse, and then there's like a slight slide, and then he's Humpty Hump. So it's the same man doing consecutive verses, but they shoot him in a way that makes it look different. And yeah, it's just surreal to me that arguably the most important rapper of all time, possibly the greatest rapper of all time, like made his film debut in Nothing But Trouble. You know, it's kind of like
Dan Akroyd.
Yeah, it's kind of like for Ray Liotta, where he almost made his film debut in Something Wild, which is should have won an Academy Award for that. That's like one of the great performances, one of the great introductory performances. Totally. But it's actually The Lonely Lady, Harold Robbins adaptation starring Pia Zadora. That's in my book. That's notorious for a bunch of things, one of which is that there is an assault with a garden hose. So he came very close to making his debut in a masterpiece that he gives an incredible performance that would kind of set the stage for Goodfellas and the 2 or 3 other good movies he did before he died. Whereas here, Tupac could have made his debut in Juice, which is an absolutely mesmerizing film. He also should have won the Academy Award. But it's really fun and really random that he made it as one of the members of Digital Underground, and not even like an official member. He was kind of like a dancer and a roadie, but he had so much charisma and so much presence that they're like, you gotta be in this Dan Akroyd movie.
It's amazing, and I think it might even be his recording debut, the particular song that he is on.
Same song. That's a single.
So, yeah, and
definitely his first single.
There's a lot of corporate synergy going on in this sequence. They were going to have their big spit-off hit. I believe there was like a music video as well that had Dan Akroyd and other silly costumes and things. That's kind of where we are with this movie. And again, it's that, but also kind of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's also kind of a Chevy Chase vehicle. And there's so much going on here.
Are we not going to talk about Stephen Baldwin? No, not Stephen Baldwin. Daniel Baldwin.
That's a good scene too. Yes. They have all these one-off scenes where the like family gets to fuck with other like unfortunate travelers, and one of them is that where they're just like shit-faced in a car, and it's an Affleck.
Well, it's a very slasher movie thing. It's like, oh, here's a new group of teenagers that shows up for them to run into and throw into the bone crusher.
Oh, and I love kind of the world building of this and some sort of like throwaway jokes. Like, you know, they kind of enter this house of horrors, basically this haunted house. And they see that apparently the guy who disappeared, he was the Teamster ad. They made
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa. Yes, they imply, they basically state that Jimmy Hoffa met his end here, and that all of these people who the judge thought were too highfalutin, or too much of city slickers, or too Jewish, they all ended up dying horrible deaths. And apparently, Dan Akroyd was very well liked as a director because he was very collaborative, and he would just take ideas from anybody. And that's where ideas like the Bone Stripper, like apparently that came from, I don't know, like the second AD, or a production assistant of some sort. Because, this is a movie that has lots and lots of crazy ideas, and they're all very audacious, they're all very extreme. They're not all successful, but this is a film of spectacle, and it is a film of ideas.
It is also a film with John Candy doing a strip tease to Big Girls Don't Cry.
And eventually kissing Chevy Chase on the lips.
And that's the thing. It's like the whole joke does just come down to, hey, Chevy Chase has to marry a guy in a dress.
That is pretty much the deal. Yeah. And
so you get humor like that alongside like the really strange, grotesque stuff.
Yeah. And
while they're trying to do this world building, which is like very like, what am I doing?
Well, this also, I'm a huge fan of EC comics from the 1950s.
Oh, yeah.
Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt. And I'm sure that Dan Akroyd grew up on that stuff as well. And it definitely has that kind of a vibe and that kind of a feel, particularly at kind of the ending, which is kind of a twist ending where they escape, but do they really escape?
There's a couple twist endings in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, before we get to that, one thing that I did wish they just didn't, it feels studio mandated to have this like Chevy Chase, Demi Moore kind of romance going throughout the whole movie.
Mm.
That's pretty rough.
Trying to continue. Not the most electrifying chemistry between these two. Especially when you have Chevy Chase, he's doing his normal deadpan, like barely engaged kind of thing. And Demi Moore is really breaking a sweat, like trying to work up this kind of broad, big, like comic energy and just running into him like a brick wall. Every time that they tried to sit down for a conversation between them, or, the ending where she's like, you saved my life. And he says, it was worth it. And you're kind of waiting for a joke and there's just a kiss and it goes to the next scene.
Well, I kind of felt like there is she has going for a little bit of a Lucille Ball thing. The thing of being like a very beautiful and very glamorous, but also funny and also down for kind of this physical comedy. But yeah, like Chevy Chase, she seems embarrassed and she seems like she would not want to be in this movie. And you can totally see like, oh, that's the actor and the actress as much, if not more than the character.
I like when she's playing cards with the babies. It's like kind of her just improv-ing a little bit. She's doing great. I almost forget how much I fucking hate being anywhere near the babies in this movie.
Oh man,
yeah,
like gigantic baby creatures are like, if I want to unwatch any part of this movie, it is that part of the movie. It's just these horrible, filthy, huge baby creatures
smeared with dirt and sweat,
talking like babies
grease and shit. I mean, like it's absolutely grotesque,
and played as like I'm supposed to find it funny. That is like such a manifestation of the confused like inner heart of this movie that is like trying to make me like run away and feel like I want to vomit and like laugh at it somehow and want to spend time with it. It's very confusing.
Yeah. Well, every movie that Dan Akroyd had written up to this point was a big hit. It was a sizable success. So I think they kind of thought like, okay, he has really, really solid commercial instincts, which I think was true in the 1980s. As I said before, he needed people like John Landis and Harold Ramis to kind of rein him in to be like, okay, that's a great idea, but you can't make a movie about that. It would cost $500 million. We don't have the technology for it yet. So yeah, I think this is an illustration of somebody being given complete freedom in a way that ultimately did not succeed at a commercial perspective. And I'm just kind of fascinated as to like, what were the studio notes for this? Like, what did, these uptight squares who were a lot more like, Chevy Chase than any of their characters, like, what did they make of the grotesque diaper babies, or what did they think of the penis nose, and like, just imagine, them watching dailies for it, or like seeing screenshots and being like, why are we spending a fortune for this? And who on earth would possibly want to see something so overwhelmingly, unbelievably grotesque?
They were like, you know what? New title, and this is going to be gangbusters.
Yeah. That'll change everything. I mean, I guess they're probably just like really just banking on Chevy Chase and just like, hey, he's in the movie. There's a romance with Demi Moore. It's fine.
Well, I mean, he had three.
I didn't read the script.
Well, he had three actors that kids loved in the 1990s. They loved Chevy Chase, they loved John Candy, and they loved Don Akroyd. But again, they just found a way to give all three of them in a way that they did not love and found a little bit repulsive. And even, Chevy Chase's character, he's handsome, he's well-dressed, he's rich. He's creepy. He's disturbing. We do not root for him. If anything, we root for him to die a horrible death, not to get Demi Moore and then, go back to his life of privilege and privilege and wealth. And you got to talk about weird elements of this. Apparently, it was partially inspired by Dan Akroyd getting pulled over in 1978 at like some small town, and then being like, "Okay, you're going to do your trial right now." So yeah, I think that kind of made an indelible impression upon him. And yeah, you said before, kind of the Hellraiser thing, which is kind of weird. The sort of like, I think I'm just throwing out random crap here. But apparently the movie...
So is the movie. It's fine.
Yeah, totally. Well, apparently the movie Dolomite, wonderful movie. I really, really love it.
I don't know where you're going with this.
It was inspired by Rudy Ray Moore watching Billy Wilder's remake of The Front Page. And being like, this is an incredibly boring movie that has nothing to say to Black audiences. I could make my own movie and it would be better than this. And it was, like Front Page is like, I don't know, kind of an okay, fairly leaden, pretty conventional. Like, Billy Wilder, he didn't triumph at the end. There were some people like Martin Scorsese, Robert Altman, or people like that. But yeah, so it's very weird to think that half-forgotten Billy Wilder movie inspired him to make Dolomite and Hellraiser and A Weird Experience that Dan Akroyd had in 1978. Sort of inspired him to make nothing but trouble. And I'm guessing a Texas Chainsaw Massacre and its sequel.
Yeah, well, and apparently the hip-hop crowd wasn't enough, didn't show up for their support for the digital underground scene. The film made like $8 million at the box office, so it was like a genuine bomb. And I watched the Siskel and Ebert review of it. Not fans, not surprisingly. Ebert especially, he called it truly horrendously awful and one of the most cheerless and unpleasant times I've ever had at the movies, Gene.
Cheerless and unpleasant! Exclamation point. Roger Ebert.
Right. Which you can't really argue with those descriptors, even if you like the movie.
I mean, and not to just continue to bring out other movies instead of this movie, but I kind of did that a little bit during this movie to keep myself warm a little bit, I guess. But it does remind me of another movie, just in the same dark, horrible world of like misconstrued 90s movies that and one of them that Roger Ebert hated very much, which was Clifford. This kind of made me think of Clifford a lot in this sort of like, what are these performances? What kind of movie is this? All of a sudden it's scary at the end.
I fucking love Clifford. I think it's a great motion picture. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Love Clifford, yeah. One of my favorite anecdotes is that Martin Short was apparently on a plane And Nicolas Cage came up to him and was like, I just got to say, I love your movie, Clifford. The scene that you do with Charles Grodin, where he tells you to act like a real boy. Like, I rewinded that so often, my cassette broke. And I love that because it definitely goes into such a bizarre place. And again, if you think of it as like this horror movie about this terrible child who torments this horrible adult, it really, really works. And then another movie that kind of reminds me of this, from somebody who was only allowed to direct one movie. Gosh, I wonder why. Freddy Got Fingered. As another example of somebody pushing the boundaries and making something that's so grotesque and so repulsive, deliberately, intentionally repulsive, that you wonder, like, how on earth did somebody be like, I will give this man $20 million for this screenplay where he just like jacks off a horse for no reason, like has nothing to do with the plot. But again, just the personality and the sense of transgression. And yeah, there's definitely a one and done, because once studios saw what you did and audiences saw what you did and critics saw what you did, they're not just going to reject it. They're going to be like the villagers in Frankenstein. And they're going to hunt you down. I thought you were going to
say, I thought you were going to say Freaked. 1993's Freaked.
That's another terrific motion picture.
See, I'll let that be the last one I bring in. But that was another one that I was just this is in the same world as this. Although I would say my problem is like I like both of those movies, Clifford and Freaked, and Freddy Got Fingered, like for the reason that they commit to the bit so hard, even if it's going over the cliff, into insanity. Or I feel like the problem with this one is that it's not necessarily committing or not knowing which parts of itself to commit to all the time, and it gets a little confusing for that, or a little like some of its edges get dulled because of that.
Yeah, I think Dan Akroyd is somebody who benefits from a collaborator, from like a really strong collaborator, which is why, again, Ghostbusters and Blues Brothers were such great films. And yeah, he didn't have that, so he sort of made this too Dan Akroyd-y, which is one of the things that I love about it, is that it's such a pure reflection of who he was as an artist and a writer and an actor. And yeah, this really was kind of the end. I kind of felt like something sort of broke his brain working on this. Like the only two films that he wrote after this were Coneheads, which I really like. I think is very underrated. And then Blues Brothers 2000, which is just really bad, and it's bad in a very sad way. And it's very much like, I had all these characters, I had all these ideas, and after being too original with Nothing But Trouble, he decided to play it safe in a way that works in Coneheads and is just sad in Blues Brothers 2000.
You said the second AD came up with the evil roller coaster ride.
Yeah, apparently,
that guy should have been his collaborator.
Well, again, it was just like he has ideas. Like, I'm very open to them. I, the guy who's dressed up as a giant filthy baby in a diaper, want to hear what your ideas are. But yeah, I would love to see just footage of him directing in character, and being like, "Not Demi, like this is what you have to do," blah blah blah. And then being like, I can't take you seriously because of your giant shitty diaper and your horrible fat suit.
I love that was what his big dual role was going to be. It was one of the twin grotesque babies. The other one just played by, I guess, some random guy. Just some guy
I had no idea.
You can't even click through on Wikipedia to find out who he is. Was just
for some reason I thought it was
2.
John Candy. Just because he had the the physique to play a morbidly obese baby, and he was already playing 2 other roles. But yeah, I really like John Candy. I like both of his performances here, and I think he manages to create a certain realness to the cop. The sense of he's very frustrated and he's been doing this forever, and he's kind of born into this horrible situation, but he also has this sense of ethics and the sense of honor, and even some of his line readings, they're very restrained and they're very straightforward, in part because he has those Dan Akroyd rhythms, because Dan Akroyd probably should have been playing that role because it fits into his wheelhouse. He also just likes playing authority figures. You know, he liked playing cops, as evidenced by Dragnet. Yeah, it was perfect. We're playing a police officer who just rattles off enormous amounts of dialogue in a completely deadpan fashion, and harkens back to like this weird thing that people loved in the 1960s that, yeah, didn't have a whole lot of currency in the 80s, although, you know, I don't know, might be a different generation, but I would watch Dragnet on Nick at Night. And it was very funny that they're like, children of 1986 will love seeing, you know, these square assholes bust a bunch of hippies for their various transgressions.
Well, that's something that hasn't changed. Like, I mean, you know, the 21 Jump Street movie coming out for an audience of mostly people who probably never watched that show.
Oh, yeah.
The power of name recognition, even if you haven't seen the show, I guess.
One of my favorite cliches is when you have a 19-year-old character, and she somehow has the musical taste of the 47-year-old man who wrote the screenplay for it. You know, like I think it's a Whistle. And like a lesbian teenager played by Daphne Keane is like, ooh, I really into the Smiths and psychedelic furs and, you know, Haircut 100. It's like, no, they would not know this music. Like, that's your thing. It's not theirs.
Yes. Oh, but I agree that if there is a heart to this movie, it's definitely John Candy in both of his roles. He's just such a, you know, a warm presence and such a good actor. He brings a lot more than probably anybody else could have possibly to that role, even to the extent of having this kind of impressive, like, silent performance as the sister. So I do want to give him credit for that. Definitely better that I think that he ended up doing that than Dan Akroyd. But it is, yeah, it sounds like it saves the movie or anything. He does have a ridiculous ending where he runs off with the Brazilian couple, where like, and now that you're our personal bodyguard and my sister's lover. Thank you for pointing that out. Like, at least he got a happy ending, as opposed to the other multiple bad endings for Chevy Chase.
Well, and I love character actors. So it was very nice to see that at the very end of this movie, Raymond J. Barry and Brian Doyle Murray both show up. Yeah, for, again, one of those, you know, sort of a happy endings that turns into an unhappy ending, but then reverts back to a happy ending. Question mark.
Yeah. Big question mark shaped hole in the wall.
Also,
Chevy Chase sized hole.
How old do you think
the fuck?
How do the judge is supposed to be? Because he seems to be older than a human being should possibly be. He seems like he's like 160.
Well, yeah, I think he's supposed to be like 100 something,
also,
isn't he? He takes off his nose at one point, like he's just a rotting, barely alive corpse. His legs.
Yeah, he's
is it
like
just an Is he supposed to be the judge from Blood Meridian, like Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian? It's like he is like indefinitely years old, like he's possibly been here since the beginning, and he is an evil southern creature. Like, who knows?
He's like a Lovecraftian monster in some ways, more so than a conventional judge.
Yeah, and I mean the whole town is supposed to be like on top of a burning a coal mine or something,
which apparently is something that really exists. Like, apparently there is, you know, like this hellish place where there's just a perpetual coal mine fire, and like people can't live like within the next 30 miles, you know, so they don't have black lung from, you know,
Trump would not appreciate
raging out of control. Does not have big, beautiful coal.
Beautiful coal.
The idea of
Dan Akroyd
coal.
does not.
Oh,
he does not appreciate a beautiful coal.
But it did give them an opportunity to have a climax where everything blows up and there's fire and explosions, as befits the budget and sensibility of this movie.
If you made it that far.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the other thing too is, imagine just the studio being like, okay, your penis nose budget is $3.5 billion. Like, that seems a little bit much, you know. Yeah, I'd love to hear what the studio had to say about his screenplay, and then also about the film as it was being filmed.
Probably a testament to the fact that they probably don't read the screenplays.
Yeah,
know.
but
Well,
again,
it
I
happens.
appreciate just how weird and kind of wrong it is. You don't really see a lot of movies like this anymore. And I've had a pun here, but two films from the last couple of years that sort of reminded me of this a little bit was the movie that Demi Moore made, The Substance,
Oh, yeah.
which again, just incredibly grotesque and boundary pushing, and kind of interesting seeing her play both, the beauty and the success, and then also just this hideous, grotesque, inhuman monster. And then The Bride, which I just saw 2 days ago, which is another movie where it's like, how on earth did this get made? And I'm not terribly surprised that it's a huge flop. And then America doesn't want to see Frankenstein sing and dance and romance and Have you guys seen The
Well,
Bride?
no.
No, that's too
Rather,
recent
have you seen The
for me.
Bride? Exclamation point. I don't want to give anything away, but it literally ends with Monster Mash. Which would
I've
be
gotta.
which would be a
You're
fun way
kidding.
to end this as well. No, I'm he dances Frankenstein dances to Putting on the Ritz, which you might remember from the movie Young Frankenstein,
yeah.
where
Young
he
Frankenstein.
also dances Putting on the Ritz. And then over the end credits is Monster Mash. Like, this incredibly violent and crazy and R-rated sexual, monster movie for adults. And then
Anything that gets you to go, I know
with
that.
Bobby Boris Pickett's anthem, his contribution to American pop culture.
Well, all right. Well, you've just single-handedly guaranteed we're going to have an upcoming episode on this movie now. We don't
Or at
get a
least
lot-
end with the Monster Mash.
Both fine options.
Yeah, it depends whether we will get a copyright restriction for that or the Digital Underground song, because we'll try for one of them. But yeah, I do agree, and this is the reason I wouldn't unwatch this, and I am curious to see if Seth would, because I feel like you were pretty down on the movie overall. But as far as us declaring whether we would unwatch the movie, I wouldn't, to the extent that even though it's hard to tell who this is for, and that it's not very funny, and it is the way that it's it's big and loud and broad like a cartoon, but at the same time being ratty and dingy and gross and kind of unpleasant. But after a while, it's especially the fact of it not being that funny kind of starts not to matter anymore. The more bizarre that it gets, and that's as far as things that are not entirely successful and were giant flops, they're usually not this interesting or bizarre. So I want to give it credit for that, and because of the child inside me who thought it was just awesome that they rode slides all the time down into piles of bones everywhere. But what about you, Seth? Did this cross into the unwatched threshold for you?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. I think you had an easier time because you watched it with people, and I was on vacation. I needed to watch it on my own. I think this would be fun with a room full of people that you're watching it with, but alone it was pretty lonely experience, I gotta say, for me. Because I don't know, I'm right. It's what I can say is it's right down there. It's getting close to unwatch for me because it is just so. But what keeps it from there is that little spark that does make it feel like it's almost gonna be, like I said, one of those weird 90s movies that I love that is tonally all over the place, like Clifford or something, or Freaked. I think just the actual sustained sitting down from start to finish is just a real slog for me. So yeah, right on the edge, but I think I'll keep it. I'll let it stay in my head.
Oh, and if I can do a plug for somebody else, my illustrator, Felipe Sobrero, brilliant guy, Brazilian illustrator, Brazilianaire. No, he's not a Brazilianaire. He illustrated a little book called The Return of the Blues Brothers, that the official sort of graphic novel sequel to To
Whoa.
Blues Brothers, to a much lesser extent,
cool.
to Blues Brothers 2000. And I kind of wanted to be like, can you ask him if I can write a book about Nothing But Trouble? Because I would love to write a book about Nothing But Trouble. I think it'd be really, really fascinating. I'd like to do like a coffee table book of Nothing But Trouble. I'd love to see all, the already shots. I'd love to see the props. I'd love to see the storyboards. And I have seen this movie 4 or 5 times at this point. I would happily see it 2 or 3 more times as well. I just saw it before we did this recording. Stone cold sober. So yeah, I think it's not perfect, but it's a very unique movie. It's a very original movie. It has a lot of personality. It has a lot of Dan Akroyd in it. It's a distinctive take on the United States as this sort of horror show. So yeah, not the world's greatest masterpiece, but I find a lot about it fascinating. So for me, not only is it watchable, but it is rewatchable.
There's the verdict. And it was fitting to have you on this because I feel like a lot of what you said about this kind of bleeds into our first episode we did with you, which was Southland Tales.
Oh,
which
yeah.
does have a lot of what we're talking about, which is like a director saying no one is saying no to, total freedom, total tonal anarchy, like, yeah.
Just so much money, just shoveling money into a giant burner. Absolutely. And yeah, actually, that's become something that we, at least for a while, we were asking all of our guests at the end of every episode. Was kind of a questionnaire that ended with Southland Tales, good or bad. And so it kind of started this running thing. And strangely, like maybe the most common answer was, I haven't watched that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, not only have I watched that one, but I've watched it repeatedly, and I watched the can cut, the director's cut, and the can cut improves considerably on the previous ones. I think it's a really, really fascinating motion picture. It's in
right.
book.
You and I were totally
as a recommendation. I don't like it, but it's like I think still one of Rock's best performances. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I haven't seen the
That I
Smashing
agree
Machine, but it's very rare for him to like actually take a chance and do something different. And oh boy, he took one hell of a chance, and he did something very, very different. And I think in his mind, at least, it didn't quite work out the way he intended.
So yeah, listen to that episode if you want to hear Nathan and I just gushing about that silly movie and Mark not having a good time.
It's very much the
also full of
between us.
Also full of Saturday Night Live characters as well.
Yeah, strangely. Okay, a lot of connections between these two movies.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Nathan. This is great. I think we did this movie justice, which is not easy.
For sure.
I would judge that to be so.
And I definitely want to direct everybody over to nathanrabin.com, Nathan Rabin's happy place, and to check out The Fractured Mirror. I know I'm sure that's the big thing you have going on right now. I mean, is there anything else that you want to draw people's attention to? Is there anything?
I have a Substack newsletter called Nathan Rabin's Bad Ideas that I'm focusing a lot of my energy on it right now. And then hopefully, I have a Kickstarter for my first satirical novel, which is a Freddy Got Fingered themed parody of Five Nights at Freddy's. Called Five Nights at Freddy Got Fingered. For some reason, the major publishing houses don't understand it, but hopefully the people will. And it was kind of inspired by my son's love of Five Nights at Freddy's. That kind of ended before the project was over. But yeah, so it's kind of this fun project that we're doing together. And God willing, depending on when this runs, the Kickstarter will be up, or the backer campaign will. Anyway, hopefully you will still have a way to give me money for possibly the stupidest idea in the world, other than greenlighting Nothing But Trouble.
Hey, they have the same name. I see it. It's chaos.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as far as the Fractured Mirror, I assume that you would prefer people get that through your website directly?
Yeah.
Although I'm sure
Please
it's
do it from
available
the shop
everywhere.
on my website. It is. Don't go to Amazon because there are some evil motherfuckers. Buy directly from me. I'm way less rich and way less evil.
All right. What a great note to end on. Here's to all the less rich and less evil movies and people of the world.
Beautiful, Marc.
Thank you. And now we'll fade in the Digital Underground song.
Drop the beat, Jay.
Oh my God. Or the Monster Man.
And now a little Tupac. There we go.
Been all around the world. Been all around the world. Been all around the world.
Unwatchables is produced by Tony Scarpitti. Hosted by me, Marc Dottavio, and Seth Troyer, with artwork by Micah Kraus. You can find Seth and I on Letterboxd under Marc Dottavio and Sloth Troyer. You can also check us out at unwatchablespod.com for links to our Twitter and Instagram, or support us on Patreon for bonus content and to have a say in what we watch. Thanks for listening.
It's just a freestyle. Meanwhile, we keep the beat kicking. Sweat dripping. Girlies in the limo eating chicken. Oops, don't get the grease on your pantyhose. I love you, Rover. Move over. I gotta blow my nose. Sneezing, but still I'm pleasing. All the slimmies. Pull out my Jimmy. Time to get busy with a Jenny. If it's good and plenty, don't you know? There I go, there I go, there I go. But I don't go nowhere without my gym hat. What I'm rapping is if she's clapping, then I'm strapping, cause I'm smarter than that. And then, girlie, maybe we can get along. Cutie after cutie. It's just the same old song.